question again.
We're trying to work out. Edwin Billett, who is the principal of the high school, came home from college with a UDF T-shirt. Edwin Billett, he's the head principal of Carroll du Toit. He lived on one of the farms. He's somebody that Burton knows. And Edwin explains that when he came home with his UDF T-shirt, his mother burnt it. So there must have been a polarisation in the community.
The coloured community.
That is why I was then saying it's a lot, especially the elder people were very conservative. Very conservative. That is why we struggled to then convince them that they should be part and support us. For instance, when we were starting with our activities, nationally, basically, the elderly people would say, this thing of these kids, lento yabantwana, you see. So Staylaville was no different from that.
No.
So hence we then would discover, some parents who are not necessarily, keen to support us in what we were doing.
Maybe they were also afraid.
We are also afraid, very afraid. But we were fortunate, as a family, because we had, this parent, his father, who was then very supportive of what we're doing. And then that also gave us strength to, persevere and then be part of, actively involved in this struggle. The other reason why we were so actively involved because our parents were uneducated, and they remained slaves of the white community those days because they worked in the kitchen as domestic workers. So our resolve was then to say we need to then also liberate them, from the slavery, that they endured those days. So I'm saying a lot of other people, other parents, sometimes we were at loggerheads with some of the elderly people, but it was a matter of, further engagement, with those people. A few that we could, get to support us, and we went on. For instance, with a church, it took the minister of that church, to convince the elders of that church that what we were doing was correct. Because we presented to him, he visited Staylaville, was from Janssenville. We presented our program, to him, the youth program, to him, just before we launched the youth program. We presented to him because we wanted to use the church, the youth programs, the youth of the church to launch the program because of this conservative, community. So we then approached him. Fortunately, it was with the elders of the church, when we presented. Then he said, I support this program.
Right.
Okay. So we then continued from there.
Okay. So we should come back to the night of the 3rd. And I think Anne was about to ask whether any of you saw, whether any of you yourselves were eyewitnesses of the shooting of Zet.
No, actually, let me start with when the police arrived.
Yeah.
They start shooting, then we ran from different directions.
From the toilets?
Yes, from the toilets. Then fortunately I was in the direction with some other youth towards my home where I stay. At that time Zet was with us in that fire. And they spotted him. By the figure, they spotted him. He had a coat, long coat, long jacket. Then Zet went this direction, then we went up straight. But they followed him. They said it's him. Then they start shooting at us. Fortunately, my father had the shot. Then, when we are about to reach the door of the house, then he opened the door. Then we managed, some of us, to get inside into the house.
Okay.
Then my home, it's the last street. By then, by then, it was the last street by then. Clever Street. Now, behind the houses, it's bushes, and then when you go to the graveyard, there were no houses there. It's only bushes. It's a field and some soccer fields, and Tom Kasibe as a school.
Okay.
Then when they followed that, fortunately, when we move up, then the Clever Street runs up straight. Then when they followed that get into a house at Clever Street, but at the top. Fortunately, there was our cousin, also by the name Percy Miggels. Percy also was with Z, but Percy get under the bed. Then Z get into the room and he pretend as if he's asleep. Then on top of the bed. But when they came, they took Z in that room. And even if they never even bothered themselves in terms of searching the house, because they got a big fish, so they speak.
Okay.
So they took that with him down the street up to the nearby house. Apparently then when we met, by then we didn't know what happened because we were all scattered. Then the following in the morning, when we met Percy, who was under the bed, yesterday they caught Z. Because fortunately he was underneath the bed,
Yeah.
Z was on top. Then they took him. So they left with Z alive inside the house. Our sister's house, this is Buiso. Our brother-in-law's house. Then they took Z. Then there was a scuffle between them and Z. Z was, but they held Z. They started to beat him with the rifles. Then we had some shots. Then we've learned that the following day that they shot them. And at the same time, I think we moved to almost most of the youth moved to the one direction. Then they came, yeah. Then they took Papi's doctor.
How did they do that then? See, we don't understand why Papi.
No, what happened? Papi was behind. I think was behind her mother's grandmother's back, inside
Granny's
the
back,
yeah,
yes.
yes. Then they took Papi there when they were
Because they
ready.
saw a light in the house.
Come again?
Mangaliso
So,
Sarko says that they went to the house where Papi Spuchter was because they saw a light on.
Yes, that
And
could
there
be
was
the
for
reason.
no other reason. It was coincidental.
And there is Uvumile why present.
The thing is, the possibility is that where Zed was shot and killed is very close to where Papi was staying. It's just a thinking, you know, because really one cannot really understand.
sorry.
It's all right, it's my fault. I just need to stand up so that I can see what you're saying. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay.
So, sorry, can
I was saying
this is the
that
bit we don't understand.
yes.
Our suspicion of that separation
Right, okay.
probably could have been spotted by the police, you know, as a witness to the shooting of Mzwande. Right. So he then might have ran away. So as the key witness at that time. So that is the reason why they had to chase him into the house, you know, and took him from the house into the van. Remember again, Uzat is already shot and killed by the police into the van with the gun. I mean, how traumatic that could be, you know. Then they took him. And then it is obvious for the system those days to destroy evidence. You know, that is one way of doing that, because Papi was, they could hear, because he went to school in the colored school, so he could understand Afrikaans very well.
Yeah. Okay.
So they spoke Afrikaans, but would understand. So obviously he could have been the key witness, you know, to the killing of.
But that's, you're just speculating.
Yeah.
You don't know that, do you? No.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Saku says that he was hit on the head with the butt of a rifle. That's what happened before he was put in the van. He also says he was put in a different van to Svandi's.
You know where Mangisa stays? It's only a house between Mangi's house, home, and Papi's home. And
But he was up on the hill. He wasn't at home. He was on the hill, looking down. I'm right, yeah. And I think that bit is definitely, you know, accurate. I don't know. One of the other things that we have asked a few times is, did anybody see, I mean, we know that there was a description of the bullet wounds on Zed. He was shot at close range, you know, so there was a lot of splintering, that sort of thing. But we can't find anybody or any description of anybody who saw Papi Spuchter's body. There's a gap, because Umi's Spuchter was asleep when this was happening. We've spoken to her a lot, and she says that her mother was very scared. She had a premonition, if you like. She dreamt that Papi was dead, and she wanted to find out and wanted to send food to the police station. So I think Papi's father went to the police station but didn't see Papi. That was the morning after, the 4th of July, yeah? And it was the following day when the police came to advise the family. They asked Mr. Spuchter, Papi's father, to leave the house, and they went to another house and told him that Papi was dead. But we don't know if anybody saw the body. We don't know if Mr. Spuchter had to identify the body. We just don't know. We also have heard from Burton Joseph that there was a trial. He says that Ronnie Pillay worked for the Miggels family.
Yeah.
As their lawyer.
Yes, he was instructed by Silas Ngano.
He was instructed by Silas.
Yeah, you know.
So were any of you at that trial? And was it a trial?
yes,
Or
there
was it an inquest?
Yes, there was a trial.
Inquest, yeah.
And
It was
how,
an inquest.
but,
We attended the inquest almost every day.
But it was an inquest, not a trial.
It's an inquest, not trial.
Yeah, it was an inquest.
so you were instructed, I mean, you approached Silas and Kandini to represent
Yes,
you
yes,
at the inquest.
yes.
And then why did he bring in counsel? Why did he bring in Mr. Pillay?
Because of the language which was used then, it was predominantly Afrikaans. You know, so Pillay was quite comfortable with that.
Right.
Yeah, so that was the reason.
And there was presumably the inquest for Papi was a separate hearing. Do you know about that? No.
I'm not sure.
Because Pappy's death certificate still, it says, under investigation.
Sure.
It does.
The cause of death. So what is the cause of death on Ms. Wandila's death certificate? What is it given as? No.
I can't remember. But I know we went to identify.
You
which
did,
one.
did you?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Right.
I was with my uncle, you know, and then we saw him. We saw the wounds, you know, the bed, you know. You still could see the cartoon of the, what you call it?
The cartoon from the gun.
Yes.
It was in his bag.
Yeah, in his bag. Yeah, we saw that, you know, and that made us very angry as well. You know, it was clear that it was shot at close range.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they wanted to make it a point that he's dead.
But he didn't want
How did you feel when you said died or something like that? What did you feel?
Well, we were obviously very angry, you know, angry at the police, and we grew very, very militant since then, you know, and we took a resolve that we will intensify, you know, the struggle and the active so as to liberate. And then, for instance, one of our relatives, who was also a policeman, Mr. Gijs, you know, he resigned immediately, you know, in solidarity, you know, said he cannot serve the police who killed, you know, Mzwandi,
Yes.
because we were relatives, you know, so he resigned. So, yeah, so I'm then saying we're very angry. No, we were very angry.
And what was the outcome of the inquest?
The outcome of the inquest.
we actually the system we were dealing with, the police, they fabricated all, and they wanted to prove that the state was not should not be held responsible for the
Yes.
death of Mzwandi.
Yeah, of course.
And we lost the case because there was a white
White
magistrate,
magistrate.
yes, who
Yeah.
decided the case.
And with regard to that question you were asking about somebody seeing, is there somebody who saw exactly what happened?
Yes.
Mm.
We did try to get a witness because there was somebody who said it was just close. In fact, it was just in front of his yard. That he said he was behind curtains and watched all the thing that was happening. But when it was time to go to the
The
court and all
inquest.
that, you know, he refused. He refused. He didn't want to be a witness, and so also that, you know, left us, you know, with no credible witness, because the witness that the person was talking about was in the house. That what he said is just that they took Uzet alive and, you know, out of the house. That's
Yes.
the only thing that he saw.
Yes.
So the police were fabricating everything else from outside the house out there. It was only the police. Yes.
He gave that evidence.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he gave evidence of the court. He
Is
gave
that
evidence.
witness still alive? Would he talk to the young people?
Because it's this.
Which one? No, no, that one. No, he was an old man.
Yeah, he was an elderly
He was a
person,
son, but he's
you know, who
since passed
was
away.
afraid to witness, you know, to be a witness, you know. So it was one funny Erasmus, Mr. Erasmus.
Right.
He was
Okay.
almost the same age as our father,
Okay.
you know. Yeah, so
Why wasn't there an inquest about Pappy Spuchter? I mean, all we've heard is that there was an inquest about Zed Miggels. But why not Pappy Spuchter? Because Pappy Spuchter was in some ways the much more difficult death to explain, wasn't it?
strange.
It's strange. It's strange because Zangto wayebetha wabata record. Kunipaki. Wayotho wayebethwe ngensimbi. But
witness at the police station. The prisoner who was there. There was another prisoner. Right.
yeah, I think there was somebody who was there in the same cell as Papi was put in. But also that witness, I don't think it did come forward.
What about you?
I can't remember.
You know, people were really afraid to
No, that I can fully understand.
Oh yes,
Yes.
I can understand that.
So,
Can you understand that? That people were too afraid to be witness.
Yes.
So I mean, even though you were not eyewitnesses, you've pieced together a story that you have come to understand is in fact the truth. And of course, you then went through this charade of an inquest. It was the same with the inquest into Molly and Brian's death. You know, also, it was just a charade. And we were not well enough to appoint a lawyer at the time. But you then went on, in our history, of course, there was the Truth Commission. So did you participate in the hearing in state level?
No,
No. No.
not actively.
not actively. But we were under Ilan tears.
Why not?
But we didn't.
Yeah.
You never went, did you not approach the TRC with the death of Ms. Wendy? You, as a family?
No.
You didn't? Yeah. Because we heard there was a hearing of the TRC in state level, but we don't know anything else about it.
Was the devil still?
There was apparently they went there briefly, but
And
we haven't been able to speak to anybody who went to the hearing. Or,
And they visited Daniel.
Oh, but I don't know.
so
it's also true that the Spuchter family, Umi's Spuchter, is able to tell us that her family received 30,000 rand.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
your family get that?
Yeah.
Can you
Yes.
tell us why? I mean, that must have been TRC, from the TRC.
Yes.
I also they gave us once off
30,000,
30,000.
like everybody
And
else.
then they said we must apply again. And we've applied. So let's say that those are bursaries. We're still waiting for that. If you remember, this thing with TRC,
Right.
this thing with TRC would also come with these victims of apartheid. Uputofi, when he was still president of state, he was, after Z's funeral, there was the carried for funeral, and then there was more state of emergency.
That night.
So he was arrested and sent to Middleburg.
And pretend.
He was beaten. His head was, it was like you putting your finger here. So I think his name also came about there,
Yes.
because we had to make a doctor's case, So I think that's where his name also appeared in the victims of apartheid.
Yeah.
So were you compensated for that?
Yeah.
I
That
suppose.
30,000.
As well,
suppose.
yes, yes.
And then Z's father as well was also given 30,000.
Yeah.
It's the Spuchter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
30,000 rand for the life of youth. What's that?
Well, I think it's
One of those things.
been absolutely amazing listening to all of you telling us about that. Really terrible night. Really terrible, terrible night. And your sketching of the background to it was very helpful. So
Oh, yes,
thank
very
you.
helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And thank you to
Yes, we're going to seem very rude but we have to get these two young men back to Statelerville before their mums and dads start, sending the police to find them. And we also have to work out how to get back. Meeting you at the engine garage was great. That really wasn't a problem. How do we get back there?